Well, okay, so we will get started with lecture. We finished our bit on media last time, right? So today we're going to pick up, um, starting to talk about political parties, right? Which is good, right? Political parties are kind of the driving force behind candidates and in elections, so it's an appropriate time to be talking about them. And the first thing, of course, we need to talk about is, hey, what are they, right? Um, and political parties. Um, I define them in two ways, right? I define them for themselves, and then I define them in reflection or opposition to interest groups because they're so similar. You need to kind of think about them at the same time. So, political parties are groups of people that think the same about political issues and about government purpose. They come together and they form a group and they try to gain control of government as a group by winning political offices, right, through elections. They try to. So the goal of a political party is to win elections. That's what they're there for, right? Win elections. Win enough elections, you control government. You control government, you can do the things you want to do, right? So that's what a political party is all about, right? Trying to get control of government and then run government from the perspective of the party that's in the majority. You have to talk about interest groups at the same time because they're very, very similar in our definitions. And I want you to be able to focus on the difference, right? An interest group is an organization of people that come together that have similar policy goals, and they get involved in the political process to try to achieve those goals. They do not, as a group, try to control government, right? They'll play a part in elections. They certainly vote. They donate money. But their goal as an organization is not to control government. Their goal as an organization is to get what they want. And usually an interest group is much more specific about what they want. Right? They're kind of policy oriented, right, in a policy group or policy area. Of course, political parties are very broad, right? They want to do a lot of different things. And so they're not going to government to get something from government. They're going to be in charge of government to deliver what they want. Interest groups will come in and try to get government to deliver what they want. So the primary goal of a political party is to elect. The primary goal of an interest group is to get the policy they want. Okay, does that make sense? And we'll have another chapter on interest groups that we'll talk about, right? So, but I needed to just kind of lay both of those out now so they make sense. So let's talk about those political parties. Their job, win elections. Right? That's their core function. That's their primary goal. They do that by winning, right, elections in cities, states, right, and the country, right. And we have these political parties that are competing against one another to win, and they're winning over their political party competition because we make them compete head to head in a single member district setup. And so it's important to understand, right, we have two parties that are prominent. And they are two parties prominent because the way we've designed winning elections kind of sets it up to be an either or system. But there's going to be one winner from each district that we have, whether it's right a House district or in the state level, or a Senate district at the state level, or a House district at the federal level. Right? Only one person wins that district. Only one person goes to government and represents that area because we have single members being elected from a district. And it's a winner take all system, right? We don't send, right, someone that's supposed to represent 40% of the district and another someone that represents 30%. And so, right, we're not doing it that way. It's the person that gets the most votes in that single member district, even if it's not a majority, right? The person that gets the most votes in the general election wins the seat. So we're looking at, right, we've got, let's see, we've got a Congressman Busey is running for re-election, right, for the U.S. here in the Central Texas area, right? There's going to be him. I think he's a Democrat. His opponent is a Republican. There's probably, if I remember the ballot right, a Libertarian on there. I don't know if I don't think there's a Green Party. I just think there's the three. Well, it's a system is set up so whoever gets the most votes out of those three is going to win. Say Busey, who's the incumbent, is probably likely to win, gets 40% of the vote, right, in that district, and the Republican gets 30%, right? 10% goes to the third party, right, Libertarian Party, and then the others are write-ins or whatever, right? Well, nobody had right over half of the votes, but Busey, the incumbent, would win with 40%. It's a plurality. Right, the first person with the most votes at the end of it wins, and that's in the general election. So, right, they'd go back to Congress. Well, that makes it really, really hard if you're a third party trying to compete, because as a third party, people are going to look at it and go, "Well, you're only going to get possibly if you do a good job 10% of the vote. You're never going to win this election." Right? So why am I going to vote for you? Right? This is what makes it really, really hard, and why we call our system a two-party system, because people are looking at the two biggest right competitors to see who's going to win. The question here is, what if a different party like the Green Party becomes a majority? That can happen, and when they do, if they do, right, then they would win the seat. Well, if they were the majority and that majority of folks showed up to vote for them, right? If they got the most votes, they would win. There's nothing that prevents that from happening, except the perception, right, and belief, right? We think of our political system as being Democrat and Republicans. Everybody else has a third party, a challenger party, right? Has to really make a big push all at one time to become viable. You can't kind of creep up on it in a sense, right? Because our elections are every 2 years or every 6 years, right? Or 4 years, depending upon if it's presidency or not, right? So there's nothing there to get some people into power like we would have if we had a different election system, right? If we were a proportional system where we sent people, sent a number of people based on the proportion of votes a party got, you'd see a lot more parties involved because they wouldn't have to win to get somebody in office, right? So think about it, right? You've got, if we look at the population out there, right, we've got, in Texas, I think we're looking at about 30% of the people say they don't vote, they're not a party member. And then you got probably 35 and 33 or 30, right, between the two major parties. And so you're up around 92, 95%, and then you got 5% or so floating around out there. That 35 or 40% in the middle could make one party and automatically be competing. But the fact is that group in the middle is split, right, between centrist Democrats and centrist Republicans, and they used to vote with Republicans and Democrats. And there's not really enough common ground for them, they believe, to come together and make a centrist party. Your Greens are on the left-hand side of the spectrum, your Libertarians on the right-hand part of the spectrum, and they're fighting for 3 to 5% of the vote. There's not enough space or people out there right now for them to make a difference. So those parties, as third parties, really don't get a lot of serious thought. Could they? Yes. There's nothing that prevents that from happening, right? If, let's say, the libertarians are out there on the right side of the ideological spectrum, and enough Republicans decide, you know what, this Republican party is just not working for us. We're not getting what we want. We really want to focus on less government. If they all shifted over, right, and elected, right, a libertarian, right, they were on the ballot, the general ballot, and they elected a libertarian and pushed the Republicans out of the scene, then, right, maybe probably the libertarians don't win because they're still going to be fighting over the margins for the Republican Party. But the next election, having had such a strong showing and become the majority on the right-hand side of things of the ideological spectrum, maybe they do, right? But it takes, right, that kind of momentum over time for that to usually happen, and we don't see it. Most of the time, if you look at the U.S. history of political parties, when you see a change in the political parties that are operating at the national level, I know we've had it. We've had, Whigs and Democrat Republicans as one party, right? We've had changes over time. When it happens, it usually happens because one of the major parties splits. And when they split, right? So let's say the Democrats decided, right? The progressives, right, the left-wing side of the Democratic Party, the progressives said, you know what? We're getting tired of putting up people like Bernie and getting no serious contention. We're just going to become our own party. Let's say they split, right? Bernie ran as an independent, and right, it was more, I got a lot more support than Joe Biden did. Well, Joe would have probably still got the Democratic Party nod, but right, they'd have split the Democratic Party, and these progressives would have set up, say, something like the American Progressive Party. And now they'd be on the general election ballot if they had enough, right? Enough people, enough support from state to state to state. It takes a lot of organization to make that happen. And then say Bernie went through the election and got more votes than Biden and the Democrats. The Democratic Party might shrink up and blow away, and right, the Progressive Party might replace it. That's how that would work, right? And that's how we've seen it work in the past, is that someone like Teddy Roosevelt, right, gets defeated in the party primary, splits from the party, right, starts his own party, gets enough support and win, right? We saw this almost happen with Ross Perot, right, in the Republican Party back in the 90s. So that's how we're going to see a new party come into this two-party system and become a player, right? Where it's the American Progressive Party against the Republicans instead of the Democrats or something like that. Or the Green Party, right, if that were to ever happen, or the Libertarian Party. Generally speaking, though, that's such a big ask, and it has to happen so quickly, that third parties don't manage to build that up. And you see them not making a difference. The other part of the problem here, too, is that if we're looking specifically at our third parties in the United States, you're looking at the Libertarians and the Greens, they focus almost exclusively at the national level on presidential elections. And so, in a sense, they're only taken seriously as either spoilers or parties that are trying to pull their policy into the discussion. If they were to be trying to be serious about actually building a party, they'd be doing it down at the state level and trying to get footholds and get people elected at the state legislatures, building their party at the state level, and then right, being able to have, right, say the Green Party registered and working and getting people elected at local and state levels across the United States. They put together their national focus at the presidential election. Well, they've got right 50 Green parties working in the 50 states. Now they've got a base to build a national presidential campaign from. That's how you probably got to do it if you're not going to split off from one of the two major parties and take over the majority that way. We could have a majoritarian system instead of plurality, which would mean that we would run runoffs. Right? If somebody didn't get a majority vote, we would run the top two, right, and run them off against each other and knock the other candidates out, and so you get a majority, right, 50% plus one to win. We don't usually do that, right? So we're a plurality in that sense. The other way you could do it is the way a lot of parliamentary systems over in Europe do it, and that's be a proportional system. And this is an interesting approach to things because it doesn't try to lock one party in necessarily as the majoritarian party, the lead party. They have a decision rule, and I'll make the numbers up. It's true in some countries. A decision rule is something like if your party can get 5% of the national vote at the state and local level or the district level, whatever they have in their country, then you're going to get party members in parliament, right? Once you get past, say, the 5% threshold, and that'll guarantee in the parliament, equivalent to our legislature, right, that party's represented and it's going to have votes. What you have in those kind of systems like that is usually 4, 5, 12, right, parties that can manage something like that. None of them can ever manage a majority, usually, without help. And so those parties, right, say if you were looking at Germany, who runs right through their parliamentary system, they run anywhere from 8 to 12 different parties on a continual basis. You'll have something like the Christian Democratic Left and the Volksparty or the People's Party, right? You'll have all of these different parties with different names. And let's say you're the Christian Democratic Party, which is one of their major parties, and you poll 35% of the vote. Well, you're going to get 35% of the seats in Parliament. It's not enough to get anything done, but you're still the majority party in that sense, right? All the other parties have less than that. But to actually make decisions to vote law through, you need 50% plus one. So that party is going to have to strike up a coalition with other smaller parties so that they have, as a group, right, a representation that exceeds 50% and can make decision-making votes. So that's how a proportional system works, right? It gets a lot more representation into the deliberative bodies like the legislature, but it also requires a lot more negotiation and compromise because quite often you don't have a party that's in control of, right, the decision of the body, the legislature, the parliament, or whatever. There's not one group that has a majority and can do what they want to do because they have the majority. They have to work with other groups. So there's a lot more work that goes on there to get anything done. So there's nothing that prevents us from redesigning our system and going like that. They're still both very democratic in their nature. It's just a different mechanism for getting people elected and getting parties elected. We've settled on this two-party system, most likely because it was right when we first started looking at rewriting our Constitution at the federal level. There were the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist, right? And things were defined as us against them or them against us, however your perspective is, and the parties came out of that. And so the procedures and the practices that developed and got implemented at the state level and then at the national level were focused around two major parties competing against each other. So that's kind of that design, that historical design that comes out of it, determined, right, this two-party system that we work with. Whereas other countries that came along later, and when we're looking at the way we were looking at it, goes, wow, there's a whole lot of people that, right, aren't happy with one of the two parties, either one of the two parties. Let's do something that gives a little more choice, right? so you can see that, you look at England, you can see two major parties, but then you can see smaller parties that are working in that. You look at, is it Belgium that has 16 or 18 parties that are routinely involved in their political system at the national level. It's interesting, you get to some of the Western European democracies, you're looking at how they develop around different parties, and the history they have is different. So their parties develop around different major focuses. You'll see parties that are religious and policy and language oriented, right? Because you got a lot of these countries that have multiple languages, and so you'll see, groups that are political parties that are, the Christian Democratic Finnish Party or something, right? And it's, their names get real long, and they're right. That's because they're representing a niche of a particular type of representation within that country that we don't usually have to worry about here. But here we're looking at conservatives or liberals, and that translates over into generally a focus on Democrats or Republicans. If you look a little deeper, we still have some of those other divisions, right? If you look in the Democratic Party, you see Greens and you see progressives. You look in the Republican Party and you see what are the Freedom Caucus now used to be the Tea Party, and you see Libertarian folks, right? And you see what the Liberal Caucus calls the Rhinos, right? In Europe, all of those little divisions would break off into political parties. Not quite, Lauren, because again, the interest group is more policy oriented, so they would still have that. These political parties would be more demographic oriented, right? Religion, language, a breakdown on socialist versus conservative, or capitalist versus socialism, or something. So much bigger than just the interest group focus. People that wanted to change how the system works, not just what the policies in the systems are. So Greens, we look at like a group like the Greens, we think of them as an environmental party, and they are. And so in that sense, you start thinking policy. But if you look at how the Greens do things, they're actually a challenge, right, to the democratic system, because they make decisions within their group, especially in Europe, much differently, right? They want to ensure, right, that the people they send to parliament demographically look like everybody. So, right, if their party has 58% women, then their parliamentarians they send up are going to be 58% women, right? They want to, in a large sense, make sure the decision making is always, I want to say communal, but that's not quite accurate. Group oriented as they make a decision, not just count the votes and whoever has the most win, right? But that's a different kind of focus on how you make decisions. So the way they've organized their party and the way they do work within their party brings a challenge to the way things get done in government. And so when they get elected into government, they're trying to change the way government does its work, not just the policy that government puts out there, right? If you're a party that's focused on capitalism versus socialism versus Marxism or something, right? You're going to have not just different policy, but a different way of trying to ensure what policy does and how people get involved in it. And so you're going to be, right, much more focused on, is this policy going to generate more monopolies? Is it going to generate more worker-owned cooperatives? Right? Not just what is it going to do, but how's it going to get there? And we don't get into a lot of those discussions here in the U.S. because of the way we approach things. Right? And so I would say that in Western European parliaments, especially, it's a lot more complicated. And there's a lot more negotiation, and things take longer to get done. Right? now we're seeing, right, even with two parties, we can make things hard to get anything done, but throw in coalitions of 3 or 4 parties and another 6 or 8 parties that are out there that you have to work with, and it can get really complicated. There's a lot going on. And they tend to see their governments change more often because of that, right? Because there are more challenges to how they're going to do things. Ours is a lot more stable. Sometimes it doesn't accomplish a whole lot, but it's right. We're focused on the 2 major parties, and we don't see serious threats from other parties because of right the way we've set things up. Making sense? All right. So one of the focuses that we've had as we've brought groups forward or different parts of just through the lecture, right, parts of government, we've always talked about how they are a linkage institution. And political parties are probably the second strongest linkage institution next to elections that we have, right? Political parties, because we are a representative society in our government, serve so many ways to tie the people to their government, and it's a real clear, direct linkage, right? Parties give us structure. Political parties give us information. Political parties help run the system. Political parties help filter through and pick our candidates, right? So there's a ton of stuff that the political party does that we as voters then engage with and rely on to determine how our representative government works, right? And you look at our presidential election right now, right? And we're talking about it, Biden and Trump, but right, that's Democrat, Republican. They represent, right, they're the 2 representatives from those political parties. And generally speaking, those candidates from those political parties are representing a list of policies that those parties want to get done, right? That if you elect them, these are the things they're going to work on. And all of that is information that we can use as voters to help us decide what we want our government to focus on, how we want them to get there, what the policies are going to be, who we want to be there. So, as a linkage institution, right, there's so many things that the political parties provide that link us through them to running our government and getting our government to do what we want to do. Obviously, right, the policymakers, right, parties, right, through their primaries, through their caucuses, right, pick people that are going to represent their party. And for most of us voters, right, we don't pay much attention to that process unless we vote in our primaries. And so the parties are right on the forefront of that, and they're the ones that are working behind the scenes to support people who want to run for office. Those folks that say they want to run for office and they want to run as a Democrat or they want to run as a Republican or whatever, and the party's not too enthused about that, the party can do a lot to hamper their opportunity to get elected, right? Now, they can't stop somebody from running for office, and they can't stop somebody from saying, I'm a Democrat running for office or I'm a Republican running for office. But behind the scenes, they have an awful lot of organization and money and people that they can push toward a candidate to help a candidate or not, right? So, if you're seeing yourself as a Republican and wanting to run for office, you probably need to make sure that the Republican Party in your area sees you as a good and viable candidate so that they'll help you, right? And parties, right, are necessary for that. So they help pick policymakers in the sense that they support some or they don't support some. They give donations to some and they don't give donations to the other, even though they're both Republicans or both Democrats or whatever, right? Right, they will use their membership, they will use their money, they will use their organization to help build and run a campaign for candidates from their party. And as a new candidate, you need that kind of help. right? A lot of what you see with the presidential election is not just trying to get presidents elected, but it's trying to get people within the states from those parties elected as well, right? So, you see both Republican and Democratic folks from the national level, right, coming into Texas and giving speeches here, right? Whether it's Trump or it's Biden or it's Kamala or Pence or Buttigieg or whoever it is, right? You can see these people that are right members of their political party at the national level, and they come into Texas. Well, part of that, of course, if you're is a presidential election, you're trying to get people to vote for you, but you're also coming in and raising money in these talks. And that money, a lot of it stays in the local or state area and supports candidates on the down the ballot. If you saw, Trump was in Arizona the other day, right? And so he's got a senator in Arizona that's running for election, Martha McSally, right? So he's there doing his bit, vote for me to be president, blah, blah, blah. And he invites McSally up on stage to say a little bit during his rally. That's her opportunity, right, to get up there and because of the Republican Party and because of Trump, to have an opportunity to speak at a much bigger rally, right, and get national-wide exposure and all that. So that's the party supporting that. Now, it wasn't much of a support. I think Trump limited her to a minute, which is kind of unheard of. But it's his campaign. So usually you're going to let them have a little more opportunity to make your case and just say that they support you and that you support them and that all of you voters out there should support both of us, right? And that's normal, right? That's normal. We saw, Kamala was coming into Texas. The odds are that Biden's not going to win Texas. But if she comes into Texas and energizes Democratic voters and they vote for Democratic House members or Senate members in the state elections, maybe that changes what the Texas legislature looks like, right? So they're helping run campaigns at the national and state and local levels. Those kind of speeches, help give cues to other people about who, I like that national candidate. Trump is my president. I like him as a Republican president. Maybe since he's saying I should vote for McSally, maybe I should. Right? Maybe I'll vote for her because Trump said, "Hey, vote for her." Right? That's giving a political cue, right? So, and so those are some of the things that help that a political party is doing. That's linking, or helping link us through the party to our government. At the national conventions and the state conventions, those parties sit down and figure out what they want to do going forward for the next 2-4 years, and they write political party platforms. And those platforms stand for what the party is, right? I haven't pulled up and showed you all a political party platform yet, have I? I don't recall doing that. Let's do that real quick, right? Because it's right now. Not that one. That one. Let me get over here, and I'm going to pull up the Democrat one, and I'll tell you why. Make sure that this gets over there. There we go. Share that. So this is Democrats.org, right? This is the national website for the Democratic Party. The reason I'm showing you this one is because the Republicans didn't actually develop one this time, which is kind of unheard of, but they had so many problems getting their national convention put together that they left, and we'll go look at it in a little bit. It's the platform that's up for the Republican Party, unless they've changed it recently, and I haven't heard that they have, is the same one they had in 2016. So this one here, right, for the Democrats is more recent. So, right, they put out a platform, right? So this is political party, the Democratic political party, all of the elements of it from each of the 50 states came together at the national convention. They did it through Zoom or whatever this time, right? And they put together this whole platform that says, here's what it means in the United States to be a Democrat, right? And they start off with lots of nice language here, right? America's an ideal, right? It's an ideal that's lasted through a lot of challenges. And here, then they're going to tell you what that idea is. Americans believe that diversity is our greatest strength, that protest is among the highest forms of patriotism, right? Um, right. They're telling you right here, right? We go to the polls this fall, right? We're going to vote for character, right? And insinuating that Trump doesn't have character and Biden does. But they're also expecting that to be an idea that goes down into, the congressional elections at the federal level as well as the state elections. Right? They talk about some challenges here, right? Like some attacks here on Trump. This is all the preamble. This is kind of laying out the big ideas, right? So, right, we're going to redress systematic injustices in our society, throw open the doors of opportunity, reinvent our institutions. Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean, right? If you keep coming down, and you can get into the actual party platform, they start giving you policies, right? They're going to protect Americans right from the pandemic. And so you click on that and it tells you what they think needs to be done. First, they're going to attack Trump. We could have done things, we didn't, blah, 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 blah. But down here later, right, it's going to start telling you what they're going to do. We're going to start by making testing widely available, convenient, and free. We're going to expand funding to state and local public health departments so that they can have enough staff. These are policies, right, solutions now, right? We at the federal level, we get elected. Here's what we're going to do that's going to impact you at the state level, right? So they're going to make, right? Now, if you're reading this, right, you should be thinking, well, is this the kind of policies that I want? Yes or no? If yes, you're thinking, well, the Democrats are going to try to deliver what I think is proper, right? There's a crisis with health insurance, right? The pandemic, it's even worse, right? So we're going to do some things to support people to get into Medicaid, right? Get things covered. If you're at risk for losing your insurance, we're going to try and do something about, right, addressing that, right? And it's going to go. So that's the COVID, right? Health, right? Here's a idea on an economy, right? Need to get it working for the American people, right? Again, they're going to attack Trump because, right, it's generally a two-party system. So you advance your position in the election by both saying what you're going to do positively and then saying something negatively about your tradition, right? President Trump inherited the longest economic expansion in American history, and he squandered it. So they're making an argument, right? That our economy is rigged against working families. Okay, let's see what we got going on the other side, right? So here's the resolution that they passed, and this is what I'm talking about here, right? We scaled back our convention due to COVID, blah blah blah. So we're going to give you some snapshots, basically, of our platform. We don't have the ability to come together and put a platform together, so we're just going to talk about the big things that we want. So here's what do they give you? The 2016 platform, right? Which is from 4 years ago. They're saying, look, this is good enough. It's got all the things we want to do. It's still all true. So here's who we are, right? So let's see what we got here. Here's their preamble. Notice it's going to be a little different. It's not going to be as much kumbaya as it is we're big, we're strong, we're going to get things done, right? And that's the nature of these, right? I'm sorry, I heard right. Oh, I'm sorry, I did not. Thank you. Let me see if I can get that over there to the other one. get that one out of there. Share this one. There we go. Right. So here's their, like I said, so they right, tell us at the beginning, here's the resolutions, right? Here's us. We had some problems. We didn't get it done. We're going to start with the 16. So they put the 16 up here, right? Even though if you look up here at the top, this is their 2020 platform. It's their 2016 platform. So you come down here and look at this. So we affirm these principles that unite us in a common purpose. So here are the things that make the Republicans Republicans, right? We believe in American exceptionalism. In other words, that the American experience and the American history and the American future is right better and beyond all other countries and other people, and we're the best, and we're gonna stay the best, right? And they're unabashedly not ashamed of that. We believe the U.S. is unlike any other nation. America is exceptional because of our historic role as a refuge and a defender, now an exemplar of liberty. So, right, this rah-rah bit here is a lot more prominent coming out of the Republican side of things, right? Believe in the Constitution as our founding document. Well, that I'm sure we could find the exact same thing over in the Democratic one, but you won't find this sentence here, right? We believe the Constitution was written not as a flexible document, but as an enduring covenant, right? We believe our constitutional system is limited government separation. Well, the Democrats believe that too, but they also believe probably that it should change some. It'd be the world changes, we should change. And the Republicans are saying, yeah, the world changes and we need to be conservative if we have to change, move slowly. Right? And so there's their principles. You should see down here then, right, actually starting to talk about policy, just like we saw over in the Democratic one, right? We're going to rebuild the economy, create jobs, right? Fair and simple taxes that'll generate growth. Here's their policies, right? Tax policies. Here's how it's going to work out in trade. We're going to make America more competitive in jobs. Right? All of this is right from both of them, kind of laying out their big picture of who they are, what their values are, and what's going to work for you. Now, as a voter and someone that's looking at this, right, you should be reading right these things, right? You should be looking at these platforms. If you don't know what it means to be a Democrat or a Republican or a Green or a Libertarian, I've never actually. Let's see if there's a Libertarian. Here's the Libertarian Party platform. This will be interesting, right? So their preamble: we seek a world of liberty, a world where all. I'm sorry, let me flop you over there. I'm getting ahead of myself again. So we seek a world of liberty, right? A world which all individuals are sovereign over their own lives and not forced to sacrifice their values to benefit others, right? Really different flavor, right, and feeling right off the beginning. Let's see if I can get down here and look at their statement of principles. We, the members of the Libertarian Party, challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and defend the rights of the individual. We hold that all individuals have the right to exercise sole dominion over their own lives, right? This is a really different kind of approach to a political party platform, right? It's not the rah-rah Republican, go USA. It's not the we're in all of this together, kumbaya Democratic. It's the we're all individuals and we're going to protect our ability to be individuals and right, not be forced to do things. So you can learn a lot, right, from looking at these platforms, right? Where the Republicans talked about the economy up front and the Democrats talk about helping people right up front. The Libertarians start off 1.0, personal liberty, and then talk about ownership and expression and privacy. And this is very different, right? Now they may share an awful lot of policy things with either Republicans or Democrats, but as a group, they're going a different direction. Right? So these platforms are important, right? So I encourage you to look at those, right? They're interesting. They give you really good information, right? And that's where you find out, right, how much of a linkage institution they really are, right? Because they're telling you these things, and then their candidates are expected to, from that party, right, have those same values as they get elected to office. And so it's really an important link between us and our government when we find a party that we want to work with and go with. All right. Oops. As at the last two here, articulating policies, that's what we see, not only within the party platforms, but that's what we'll see, especially in the news and the papers. And you see folks elected to office, Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi or whoever talking about what they want to do, how they want to get things done, what bills they want to pass. They're telling you, right, as a party, these are what things we support. And that informs you both as, right, maybe someone that supported them or didn't about where they're going and what you want to support and vote for in the next election. So again, they're linking, providing information that links you to how the decisions are made and where the country's going and what party's going to be doing, what the party's going to be doing and whether that works for you or not. Once you elect folks into office, those parties serve to organize the policymakers that are in office and the policy making that they're going to do, right? We see Nancy Pelosi, right, leading the Democratic Party in the House, and we see Mitch McConnell leading, right, the Republican Party in the Senate, which are the two majority parties in each part there. And so, right, that party identification that all of those folks get elected under, right, that they run as a Democrat or Republican, puts them into a decision-making structure once they get elected to office. And if you're lucky enough in the House or the Senate to be elected into a position where your party's in the majority, you're going to get the opportunity, right, to coordinate with other folks of your party to get policy put into place that you ran on, that people elected you to get done. Now, obviously, when you get it split, you get a divided government where you got Pelosi and the Democrats running the House and McConnell and the Republicans running the Senate, and they're trying to go two different ways, then you may not get much of anything done, right? Because they're going to have some headbutting going on there. But the idea, right, is that these parties, right, organize the individuals that belong to the party once they're in office. They're to work together and to get along and try to get something to happen. And then even between the parties, right, you get leadership of the Democratic Party in the House and leadership of the Republican Party in the House. And they'll, right, meet that leadership. Those leaderships will meet to try to, what can we get done together? Even though we're trying to go different directions, do we have any common ground? Can we work together? And then at times you'll see that same leadership go across the institutions, right? We see, if you've been watching the last couple of years, a couple of times, right? President Trump's had Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, right, Democrat from the Senate, minority leader of the Senate, Nancy Pelosi, the majority leader from the House, Kevin McCarthy, the minority leader in the House, and Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, the Senate, all come together with the president. So you've got all the leadership from both parties in both the House and the Senate there with the president. And they're trying to say, what can we do, right? Is there something we can do together? Right, so this is the coordination that the parties and the structure of the parties put together and allow to have happen to try to make policy at the national and or state level, right?